Making any sort of significant change in your life comes with a process. It has to have some kind of intentionality. So I want to share with you a few pieces of my pivot strategy, things that I keep in mind when making any kind of significant change in my life. Here's pivot strategy number one: stay in your zone of genius. I've been a generalist my whole life, up until right about this stage of my career. Being a generalist required me to know a little about a lot of things. And for a time, that served its purpose, right? Because I was actually a teacher. I'm certified in teaching generalist 4 through 8. That's a lot of topics for a lot of different grades. And so that's a wide stretch of things. And I found that I was constantly stretching myself to know more and more and more and more. And while that can be great, there is actually something called your zone of genius that I talk about quite a bit. Your zone of genius is that place where your gifts and your strengths support you in the work that you're doing. It takes a lot of effort and self-reflection to find what that zone of genius is. But when you find it, you find that you have more energy there. You're able to do things a little more easily than when you were trying to stretch yourself in a whole lot of different directions. I challenge you to discover what your zone of genius might be. This might be you talking to people and saying, hey, what have you observed me being good at? It could be you taking an assessment or two. Some of my favorites are the Strengths Finders and then also the Harrison Assessment, which I'm certified in, and I use it in my coaching practice. Once you find that, you find that all of that anxiety you felt trying to know so many things goes away because you can have a laser focus on the area where you really shine. So strategy number one, find your zone of genius and have laser focus on that area. Everything else that is not in your zone of genius, you might consider delegating or handing that over to someone with whom that is their zone of genius. Pivot strategy number two. Do the hard thing first. I know. When it's Monday morning, you want to lay back, you want to sip your coffee, take your time. However, you find that you would actually be more productive if you do the harder thing at the top of your day first. Dr. John Townsend says, do the hard thing first. An author, Brian Tracy, says, eat the frog, right? That really ugly, big thing that you have to do at the beginning of the day. I highly challenge you to address that thing first. You would be so surprised how much more relaxed the rest of your day looks like. So for me, I actually love Mondays because I can kind of front load all of the difficult face-to-face, more challenging brain crunching types of activities high in my day. And then by the time it's after lunchtime, I have more pleasant, relaxed work style, right? I do find that some of us, it depends on what type of person you are. I'm a morning person, probably more so a mid-morning person, so I can get a lot of work done in the mid-morning, right? And so some people find that their cadence of work might differ. You might be a nighttime person. So tailor it to yourself, but when you're trying to figure out what tasks to address first, do the hard thing first. I promise the rest of your day will be much easier. I don't know who needs to hear this, but perfection is stunting your growth. Here's pivot strategy number three: progress over perfection. Progress over perfection. It's really important. If you're going to grow as a person, growth is incremental. Rarely does it ever happen overnight. And so if you're seeking to find perfection, you're probably going to waste a lot of time tweaking and tweaking. Trust me, I'm a creative at heart. And so when I'm making something, I oftentimes find that I'm trying to make a perfect version of a thing that actually maybe needs a few iterations and a few versions before I get it right. Here's my example. I made a journal called the Pivot Journal that I use a lot in my coaching practice, and I designed it from scratch by myself. And when I first designed it, I had this grand master plan of what I wanted to do. And so I had all these pages in mind, and I was tweaking and tweaking and tweaking, trying to make sure it was perfect, but I had a deadline. There were people waiting to receive my journal. And so I had to figure out, okay, I just need to get to a version that is good, something that I'm proud of, and let it go and let the people use it, get their feedback, and then make a second and maybe even a third version that is better than the first. Had I waited, I would have missed out on an opportunity. So I actually got to take my journal to Costa Rica and use it for a coaching event that I had there. And so because I let myself use my first version, I had a version to present to people, and I got some really meaningful comments from them in order to advance it in the future. There are so many opportunities waiting for you, but if you procrastinate because you're trying to be perfect, you're missing out. So take the time right now to get your work to a stage that you're proud of, and then commit to coming back to it and making it even better for the next time. Remember, you usually have a few versions that you can present, right? Many times when we hear great ideas, we're hearing just the beginning foundation of an idea, and there's lots more room to grow. You never know how getting feedback or getting even some more eyes on your project can really help you to improve it. So don't let perfection stunt your growth. Progress over perfection. Systems are your friends. Here's pivot strategy number 4: make systems. I always try to challenge myself to get things out of my head and into a piece of paper or into some system that I've created. I always work with the assumption that my work is going to be handed off to somebody. I'm very legacy minded. So whether that means handing it off to a coworker or someone on my team or even an intern, I don't assume that people are in my mind and can understand processes like I can. Usually when I create a process, it's to make my life easier. If I find that I'm doing a task over and over again and it's pretty repetitive, I want to make a system so that I understand how to do that thing kind of with my brain on autopilot. Oftentimes, we're putting so much pressure on our brains to remember different details and different passwords and processes. It makes sense to put it down in a piece of paper, whether that's your planner, or for me, I love digital tools like Notion and Trello and Monday.com. Those might be the systems that you use, but make sure that you have an opportunity to take some knowledge that you know and put it on a piece of paper so that you can share with other people so they can learn. I think back in the day, people used to think there was security in being the people who knew all of the things and could be the go-tos, but now there's actually a lot of security and pride that you have when you are the person passing on legacy. So make sure that you have information that can be handed off to other people so you can empower them and that you can move into bigger and better things that use more of your creative process. Once we make room in our brains, we can find that we're more creative, we can level up in our leadership and other things that we want to do. So make room and make systems. My friends, you have got to start automating. Are you doing a task that is below your paid grade? I did a really scary exercise one day. I was trying to do my hair and it was taking me hours. And I sat down and I thought, let me calculate my hourly rate and see what it costs me to do my hair for 3-4 hours. And it was ridiculous. I was overpaying myself for my hair. I realized I needed to fire myself and hire somebody else who, number one, that was their expertise or their zone of genius. And secondly, they could do it with a faster amount of time and it would cost me less. Many of us are doing things that could be delegated or automated in some way. If you are sitting down tracking your expenses, there are apps that do that. If you are sitting down trying to do a task that a robot can do, you are operating below your pay grade. So please fire yourself and automate.